So thanks for joining today's seminar. This is the joint seminar series between the Institute for Sustainability and Resilience and the Center for Pacific Island Studies. I'm very excited to introduce our speaker today. We have Tolua Samifua, who is a criminal justice professional by day and a creative builder all the time, right? While completing her undergraduate studies, Tolua recognized the need for a publication solely dedicated to Pasifika community of women. 12 years after receiving her master's degree in criminal justice and working for the Department of Public Safety as a human services professional here in Honolulu, Tolua launched Lady Pasifika, a venue for highlighting women from within the communities of the Pacific Islands to the world in a form of a magazine. Since its launch in 2018, Lady Pasifika has expanded beyond a magazine to the global online community. And before I pass this to you, Tolua, I just want to remind everybody that this seminar is being recorded, and the recordings will be available afterwards on the CPAS YouTube channel as well as the ISR webpage. So Tolua.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank Dr. Viernes and the entire Center for Pacific Island Studies faculty for inviting me to share my experience on resilience. And since launching Lady Pasifika about 2 years ago, I founded Lady Pasifika in 2018, as stated in my bio, after working with defendants at OCCC, the local jail here, for about 2 years, and recognizing that there were many Pacific Islanders that I didn't know them personally, but I could relate to them. And my job at the time was interviewing defendants coming in to the jail. And that experience of relating to them in a different way than some of my colleagues really resonated with me. And I felt the need to do something where I wanted to showcase the amazing people in our own communities that are doing positive things. And because I'm a lover of magazines since grade school, college, I wanted to do something in the form of a magazine. The idea of the magazine itself was, I thought of it in my undergraduate years at Mānoa, but at the time, at 22 years old, I had no idea of how I was going to do that. So it really just stayed in the back of my mind until getting my master's and then working at OCCC. That's where the idea came back, and I decided to launch Lady Pasifika because as far as being a female, a Pasifika female, I wanted to showcase the amazing things our women are doing in our communities across the globe. So that's where we're starting. So my topic for today is really kind of my experience in running Lady Pasifika for the past 2 years. And growing from the mistakes that I've made, growing from the failures that I've had so far on this journey, and just wanting to share with everyone that it isn't a straight and narrow path in doing the work that we're doing. And also that this relates to everyone else as far as your own personal goals, as far as your dreams, that failure is going to happen and you grow from it. So yeah, all right. So I'm just going to walk through my little presentation here to kind of have some talking points. So my first screen I wanted to share was knowing that everyone fails. And to understand that, first of all, I think for me, it was hard for me to understand it in the beginning. I've always been a go-getter. I've always been one to go after what I want. And I have failed along the way, you know, personally, but in running Lady Pasifika, there have been trials and issues that have come up that I have failed as a leader. I failed as a founder. Um, so going into the talk, I just, you know, want to really just start with knowing that everyone fails. Everyone, I think, if you have personal heroes in your own life, um, they will all say the same thing, that they failed at something along the line. But this topic is moving forward and how you learn from that. So I wanted to open this up with a quote from Bill Gates, who is extremely successful. And I'm sure everyone here has heard of who Bill Gates is, but I thought this quote resonated so much with the topic that I'm sharing. It's fine to celebrate success, but really more important to heed the lessons of failure. So going into the talk, we'll talk more about that. But I think it's in part of the bio that I had also, the information I included on the flyer was that, especially in the age of social media, we see so many people's wins, right, and successes, and you know, the beautiful things that come with that, but rarely do we see real losses or real stories of people who have fallen and maybe even got lost along the way and then have decided to keep going. So I think with this quote, to me, when you fail at something, it's so important to, and along the lines we'll talk about this, but it's important to remember and learn the lessons that came from that failure, so that you will learn from that and hopefully not repeat the same mistakes going forward. All right, so these are the topics that I'm going to cover quickly. We're going to identifying time wasters. That's one of the things I want to talk about. These are things that I wished I had known prior. Trusting your gut, keeping your eyes on the prize, or remembering what's important, and failure is the best teacher. So we'll talk about that along the way, but these are the 4 points that I kind of want to just talk about or talk around. Okay. So I want to start with identifying time wasters. So this, going along the lines of learning from your failure, is big. A big one is a lot of us overthink things, including myself. Overthinking can kill any kind of enthusiasm you might have in the beginning, because you start to think about how people are going to perceive what you're doing. How are people going to take what you're doing? Are they going to like it? You know, are they going to want to, for the magazine, like my biggest thing was, are people actually going to want to buy this? Are people going to be interested? Are people going to want to read these stories? And I personally love stories. And so highlighting the women in our community was something I really wanted to do. But part of that overthinking starts to kill that initial enthusiasm, right? So this is one of the things, it's a waste of your time, you know, overthinking something. You definitely want to think about things that could go wrong, and that is part of the lesson. But overthinking things is something that you definitely want to try not to do, especially when you're enthusiastic about something, especially something that's going to serve your community. Not being prepared is also a time waster. So going back to the beginning, I launched Lady Pasifika on a whim, just from that passion of wanting to empower my community, because of the experiences I've had in the jail working with defendants who were Pacific Islander. I feel I could have saved a lot of time had I done maybe proper research before launching. Even with leading a team, you know, I had no prior experience in leading a team. Even publishing, you know, I had no business experience, no publishing experience. The only experience I have in a journalistic view is my English degree that I got at Mānoa so many years ago. But I think being prepared for and what you're looking to do is a huge time saver. So that's something that I feel that people need to, I think it'll be helpful in saving time for you, is being prepared, you know, looking at the different ways that something may not work. You know, so yeah. So the next thing I want to move on to is the wrong people. So when I say the wrong people, this can mean so many different things. And it could mean people you're working with, it could mean people you turn to, it could be people that you relate your concerns with, or even just sharing some of the frustrations you're going through. And, you know, part of putting together this magazine is you're bringing thoughts together, you're bringing people from different backgrounds together. And my failure from the beginning was not recognizing that some people may not have the same idea that I had, and not making the decisions sooner to address that. The wrong people also, as far as sharing your concerns with your own personal concerns with, because you have some people who really do want to help you, and then you have some people who may not necessarily really care too much to really try to get you through tough times. So I think when you're identifying time wasters is looking at who you're surrounded by, who do you turn to when you are in need of encouragement, maybe just to even kick ideas around with, is, recognizing that if you're with the wrong people, that can waste a lot of your time. But that comes with experience too. But I hope that these three things will help in your journey, and whatever you're seeking at this time will help you to not waste that, unnecessary time. Okay, so I have some quotes again. I love quotes, but I think they speak to what I'm talking about here. So with overthinking, rule number 1 is don't sweat the small stuff. Rule number 2 is it's all small stuff. So that's the overthinking part, right? I think for people who, especially like me, when you overthink something, you think that this one thing is going to be it. But no, all of it is big things, right? So, if you overthink something, just from that alone, it could kill any kind of, again, enthusiasm, passion that you have in something that you're going towards. The second quote I have here is, opportunity does not waste time with those who are unprepared. And it's true. When you're not prepared appropriately, you will definitely miss opportunities. I think and that could be as far as preparation in your mindset, getting your goals out there and making them clear to yourself. If you're not prepared, any opportunities could be wasted because you're doing too much of the back work that, maybe should have been done previously, before trying to launch something or work towards something. The last one here is you will either get what you want, or you will get used by others to get what they want. So I think we hear this in different ways at certain times, maybe with different talks, but I feel like this is an appropriate quote for the point I was trying to make about working with the wrong people. In the past, I have worked with those where I am so passionate about something, I go full steam ahead and realize that sometimes I'm out there on my own, right? And people that inspired me, or people who have invited me onto things, are really just kind of hanging in the back end while I'm going full steam ahead, working so hard because I'm so passionate about something. And this is something where this quote I felt resonates. And you want to make sure that if you do bring people with you, or you should, you want to make sure you guys are all on the same page. You guys are all working towards the same goal. And, that you feel like you're part of something. You all are part of this together, rather than one doing more than the other, one pulling more weight than the other. Because, people could have different intentions, people can have different motives versus what you have in your mind about your passion. So this is something this quote I felt resonated with, with the wrong people as a time waster. Okay. Oh, here we are. Sorry. All right. Okay, so trusting your gut. So this is one I've learned, and something I know a lot of us have heard, and it's probably been brought up so much, but hindsight is knowing that something may turn out this way if you go down this path, but you still do it. And or going down this path knowing it's not going to work out, but you still do it, So this is where I want to lead into, trusting your gut, as far as learning from mistakes in the past that you've made, is, listen to yourself right from the beginning. Don't try to, don't try to lean into something that you're not sure of when you kind of already know how it's going to end up. All right, so breaking it down, this was a good way of kind of talking about some of the failures that I've had in the past in leading Lady Pasifika and in just personal or professional things, is breaking it down. So I want to just kind of talk about, like, how do we know when something doesn't feel right? So in the beginning, when you're excited about something and you want to start something, then the energy is like just amazing. It's through the roof. Everyone's on the same page. Everyone's celebrating. And then something changes, right? And so this could be part of not trusting your gut, right? How do you know when something is not right? And for me, you feel the energy shift. You feel an uneasiness, an apprehension about something, and you feel dread, and you want to avoid a certain situation. So for me, I learned very early on that I should have listened to myself when it came to certain things that about the magazine. But immediately after, you could feel the shift, like, okay, something has changed, and now I'm almost I'm almost dreading this thing that I was so passionate about because of something that has come up. Question 2 is, why do we have a hard time addressing an issue with certain people? So for me, as part of the trusting my gut was, when you are involved in something that could be seen as a community service or a project that is supposed to empower the community, it's hard to be, for me personally, I just didn't want to be seen as the bad or the mean person when it came to addressing something or being firm with an idea or a vision that I had. I also didn't want to deal with the stress of a possible confrontation. And I think a lot of us deal with that. I think a lot of us don't want to be in an environment or a situation where you have to come out the bad person in a way because you don't agree with something, or maybe even just addressing someone that may no longer serve the purpose of your mission or your community, and having to let them know that this is not going to work out for them. Those things are hard. Those things are not easy, and I don't think anyone likes to deal with. So this is why I wanted to talk about that. What, as far as like listening to your gut in the beginning, when you kind of already knew, but you still went with it. And then it comes down to, why do I have a hard time addressing these issues? So the third question is, how do we prevent this from happening again? So again, trusting your gut. But if you're going to still, working with different people, different ideas, collaborating with people, is be honest right from the beginning. Don't be afraid to lay down your objectives right away. Be clear about what you want and what your expectations are. And that was a failure on my end in the beginning, was not really having a clear vision because it was done on such a whim, right? But what I've learned from that is trusting my gut, knowing right from the beginning what I want, and really not compromising with your objectives from the beginning, especially if you do have that mission of trying to serve your community in that sense. Okay, so the third point was, staying focused, or keeping your eyes on the prize, is staying focused and continuing to show up and do the work. So we all get distracted from time to time. We could get, we kind of maybe fall off our path, maybe we're uninspired, could be because of negative energy, and we don't want to deal with something. Or it could just be the noise from outside, different people, social media, where you see things again about the wins, right? People are doing things a certain way, and oh my gosh, so many people love the way they do this, and how come they're not responding to my stuff? Or just even as far as like, oh, they're winning, how come they're doing so well, how come I'm not doing well? That is such a huge mistake that I had made in the beginning, was looking around, looking at what other people were doing, and getting discouraged that I wasn't doing enough, that I wasn't showing up enough, that Lady Pasifika wasn't serving enough. And where you start to lose really the value of why you began what you started, because you're trying to blend in with what everyone else is doing instead of staying on track with what your initial goals were. And with Lady Pasifika was really just to share the stories of resilient women. That was the whole purpose of starting Lady Pasifika. There was no other, I think, ideas that I had. My clear vision was to share stories and share these amazing stories from our own women to empower our youth, really, to empower our younger generation, so that they don't have to only look at the stars in Hollywood, or, you know, when they have their own heroes and sheroes right here in their community that are doing amazing things. So, you know, there was a time that I fell off track. I got distracted, you know, by noise from either, you know, people I'm working with or just looking on social media. And that at one time did distract me from the vision I had when I launched Lady Pasifika in 2018. The enthusiasm I had in launching Lady Pasifika was allowing myself to get into this vibe of, you know, almost like that competitiveness or the need to keep up with what other people are doing, you know, staying hip and staying trendy, you know, but really getting away from the whole reason why Lady Pasifika launched to begin with. So, you know, there are times that things don't work out. You know, maybe a story didn't hit the way you would hoped. Maybe a post that you posted didn't hit. You know, maybe a story that you wanted to publish didn't go through. Maybe the person backed out. You know, didn't like it. Whatever it is, or maybe just working with a certain people, or maybe a different organization didn't pan out, and it sucks. It sucks to know that it didn't work and if you failed at some point at something. And you know, but to remain true to your vision and to benefit your mental health, and I had to deal with this as well, is to acknowledge the mistakes that were made. You know, what led to this failure? You know, what could I have done to handle maybe a situation earlier on, to have prevented this? How could I have been better prepared, you know, as far as maybe an event, maybe a story? How could I have better addressed certain issues? Again, from the beginning, you know, listening to your gut from the beginning. Had I done this prior, maybe I would have prevented this. And a lot of it is acknowledging the mistakes you made, you know, rather than ignoring it or glossing over it, is doing the work as far as acknowledging that you did fail at something. You did fail at this, and then letting go. You know, I think a lot of us hold these failures for a long time, and that affects mental health, right? And I know as Pasifika people, we don't like to address that. We don't like to sit with these issues that we have, or even just talk about it, you know, voicing it, you know, sharing it with, you know, friends, loved ones that we're going through a tough time. I think a lot of it is acknowledging it, you know, going through the steps of how can you learn from this, and then move on, you know, let go, move on. You know, when you dwell on something you can't change, it keeps you tethered down to the past, you know, which you can't change. And that does not contribute to your growth. So, you know, going back to staying focused is you're acknowledging your mistakes, you're acknowledging what went wrong for whatever reason. And you're going to do the work as far as learning what can I do moving forward so that this doesn't happen again, as much as I can control it. And then you move on and you move forward and set new goals, you know, look at what else you would want to do so that you don't stay stuck, you know, in the past and breaking down your own confidence and mental health. So the last point is failure is the best teacher. So I have another quote here is, failure is success if we learn from it. And that's such a huge takeaway for me, is if you don't learn from the mistakes you made in the past, it's almost like your parents telling you, how many times have I told you this? How many times have I told you not to do this? You know, parents, relatives, you know, bosses even. How many times have I had to tell you? You know, it's so true. If you don't learn from the mistakes that you had made in the past, you will not, it is a true failure, because you will continuously make that same mistake where, you know, you may have to shut down, you may have to change goals, you know, you may not be able to inspire people to believe in what you believe. So really, failure, you know, to learn from it is the success. It's the biggest, to me, in failing and early on is a huge benefit to me. Yes, it sucks. It sucks to admit to the world or to even to yourself that something didn't work out. Some things just don't work out, right? But what do I do from here to prevent that in the future? Especially when you have, for me personally, something like Lady Pasifika that I truly believe in, that is grown in the last 2 years, way beyond that I expected. How can I learn to benefit my community, to benefit this platform? So, so now that we know that what didn't work is we want to focus on how to restructure. You want communication styles, leadership styles, organization styles can always be improved. And that's something that I've, had to swallow. Like, I needed to improve how I lead, how I communicate. My organization, personally, is I had to improve so that way I don't repeat these mistakes in the future in leading Lady Pasifika and professionally. Also, understanding is to be real, not perfect. No one is perfect. I think this idea, this facade of being perfect is so damaging for us, especially with social media as a huge game changer as far as facades, perfection, the lie of perfection. Know that you will not know everything, and that even sits with me as a leader. In my full-time job, I don't know everything. I'm not gonna know everything, and that's okay. But it's like, how can I help serve? Who needs the knowledge that they're seeking, right? So I need to do that research, but I'm not going to know everything, and I have to understand that. I won't succeed at everything, and I have to be okay with that. But for me, again, as a perfectionist, everything I've gone after, I've pretty much I've failed along the way on some things, but I have to acknowledge that it's not always going to work out the way I want. And then there will be times that you're going to have to make decisions that not everyone will like. That is something I think really was the hardest thing for me, was knowing that I'm going to make decisions sometimes that I will come across maybe as, not very nice, maybe not favorable, but when you're looking at the organization as a whole, this will benefit that. And sometimes it's hard for people to see that in the beginning. You have to make those tough decisions at times, and it's not always going to be fun. The last one is resilience. And, you learn valuable lessons from failure. Your resilience comes from, failure, from setbacks, from not getting what you wanted, from, whatever it is in your life that holds you back. Those lessons are so valuable that I feel you become much more confident, you become stronger and resilient. Failing is learning, but again, learn from those mistakes. The stories in our magazines, our 4 issues so far, are really stories of resilience. And I think that this topic that is so real, I think that's what inspired me to launch Lady Pasifika, was these women, these people in our magazines, in our issues, have gone through extremely sad, bad situations, and yet still continue to serve, still went forward with their dreams and their goals, and succeeded without failure, without facing their own failures. And I think that is a huge good lesson for me to remember, that I'm inspired by the stories that we share in our magazines. And I have to remember that a lot of these stories are stories of resilience, of people that have failed at one time, but still come out on the other end, winning and succeeding and inspiring the community. So let's see here. So if you want to just kind of recap, that the summary of learning from failure is accepting it, that failure is going to happen, but failure is also a big part of a commendable thing for you, because you're taking a risk. You're putting yourself out there. You're allowing others to come in and have talanoa about what you're doing. And that's not always the easiest thing, especially for Pasifika people. It can be hard sometimes to put yourself out there like that. But know that taking that risk is a huge commendable thing, because not everyone will do that. Failing is to allow a mistake to keep you from your potential. So failing and letting it sit with you, if you allow that to stop you, you're failing to show your true potential, or to even meet your potential. trusting in yourself. We will fall short at times, but you are your best asset. Trust in yourself. There will be setbacks, but trust that your vision, hold on, sorry, but trust yourself. Oh, geez, sorry. But trust your vision, trusting in yourself. Oh, goodness. Okay. All right. Sorry, guys. Just gotta let it go. All right. And then keep learning. I think this is a big thing. I think a lot of people, when they see someone as a boss or a leader, they feel like, oh, they know everything, and they are the epitome of knowledge. Like, no, that's not true. For me, I am 36 years old, and I learn something new every day, and I look forward to learning new things because that's how we grow. I think we can't get better at what we do without learning new things. We can't grow into new topics, new issues that come up without learning new things about ourselves, about how we view the world, about how we want to address something. And so that's never be too proud to continue learning. Failing is part of learning and growing. Thank you. This is my Afitai Tele Lava. Thank you for listening to me ramble for a little bit. But this is just some of the things. If you want to stay connected, I'm on Instagram, my personal account. And then here's Lady Pasifika's contact information also.
Mahalo, Tolua. That was a great talk. And we already have questions coming in from the Q&A, which is awesome.
Okay.
So I just want to remind our audience that is the way to get questions over to me so I can field them to Tolua. So the Q&A is open. Please start typing in your questions and we'll get to them. So the first question is, you spoke about social media as a platform that is used primarily to celebrate success, but one that rarely showcases failures. Can you speak more of the dangers you mentioned that this creates for Pacific communities, specifically how they see themselves or how they empower themselves? What are some things coming from Lady Pasifika that will help create new safe spaces to tell fuller Pacific stories of success, failure, and resilience?
I think so. We've tried through our stories in the magazine is to showcase when we tell a story or we share a story, we try to share the whole perspective from the person that's sharing their story. A lot of times, again, from that topic is there are some who have opened up about the failures they've experienced and some who don't, and we really don't want to push people too much to share if it's really uncomfortable. But as far as how can we do that is, I think going forward in our initiative with this issue, especially with our thank you issue coming out, our trying to push to get people who are sharing their stories to really open up a little bit more about the failures that they've experienced. Because it could vary from person to person. Some people are willing to share some of those stories and some are very personal. But I think opening up opportunities for people who want to write, people who want to blog on our blog space. We always welcome people to come on and share what has happened in their experiences without any kind of really over editing, because the thing I hate is over editing something, because I don't want it to sound not real from the person who shared this story. I try not to edit too much because I really want to keep the voice of the storyteller authentic. And another thing too is if they want to share their story, we always try to welcome them to really write it themselves. And I can do maybe just like grammatical things maybe, but there are some people who don't want that. They'd rather I interview them and I get what they tell me, and then I guess I retell that for them. But I always try to encourage people, if you want, we really want a lot more of our community to share either through a blog post that we welcome people on, or hitting us up at our email and sharing a story that they really want to share. We welcome anyone to come on and do that. We don't hold back. We want you to share whatever it is on your heart and your mind to share with our community.
Yeah, and I saw on your website that in October, just in a few days, you're going to be releasing your first sort of all online publication. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about your pivot to doing that in this time?
Yeah, sure. So part of the failures was just not thinking about the money that goes into publishing a magazine, how much it takes to print a magazine. It's extremely expensive, and it's not that wasn't the issue that I had. It was just that because Lady Pasifika is self-funded, literally from my paycheck, my personal paycheck, it was really a drain on my own personal expenses, and that's something again not preparing for, right? So and the thing too that really made me feel some type of way was, I wanted my objective to start Lady Pacifico was to share stories, and it really kind of always hit me in my gut that I'm charging people for these stories. So even when we did digital issues in the past, we still had people pay, and I felt like I wanted to just scratch that as much as we could and get these stories out to the community. And right now, online is the quickest way you can share so quickly, because shipping to a magazine to international countries is so expensive. But when you're online, it goes like hotcake. It goes like wildfire. So the digital issue is going to be free. We're not charging that for that. It comes out on Monday, this coming Monday on the 26th, and we can't wait to share that with the world, because these stories are very, very much born from the pandemic, born from stories that I think people have been wanting to share. And I think topics too on my own mind that I've been wanting to talk about in the past that I didn't feel confident talking about. And now we're doing that. So there will be a physical issue, but the digital version of it is free. It will be free for everyone to share, and hopefully love the stories and want to talk about them with family, friends, whoever will listen. So that comes Monday, Hawaii Standard Time.
Awesome. That's great to know. Everybody can
Yes.
look at it on Monday. Another question that came in through the Q&A. Can you share with us one of your sheroes? Who is she, and why does she inspire you?
I have many. Oh goodness. But I guess as tacky, I guess, as it sounds, or as corny as it sounds, my mother is a huge hero to me personally. She has a personal. So my mother is from Samoa. I am first generation Samoan. Both of my parents are from Samoa, but my mom has. This is funny because we talked about her a little bit before the conference started, but my mom has worked at Kokua Kalihi Valley, KKV in Kalihi, for about 20 years, more than 20 years now. And she works with the family planning sector. And so she has worked with a lot of the underserviced community. For me, growing up, I was a military child. My dad was in the U.S. military, and so we lived a very privileged life. But my mom, and I didn't know that till I got much older. I didn't recognize that till I got much older. But my mom has worked with these communities for years, and I think I didn't understand the depth of what my mom was doing. As far as to me, growing up, it's just mom's job. I didn't realize until I got much older that she's been serving our community for more than 20 years. Comes home, still is mom, still is wife to my, but she has always instilled that sense of community service right from the beginning. And I wasn't even aware of that. We were always participating in community walks. We were always involved in the breast cancer walks, about even sexual health education for Pacifica people, especially for Samoans, at least back in that time. It was very taboo or unheard of. And my mom is a religious woman. She's very involved in my church, but still knew that these conversations had to happen because it's realistic, and in order to understand our bodies and what's happening in the community. So my mom is a huge shiro. She came from Samoa as a college student, went to Chaminade, and has been at Kokua Kalihi Valley for over 20 years, and has always inspired me to serve my community. And I feel like Lady Pasifika is an extension of that.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Actually, I have to say this, because it came into the chat. There's a comment of, your mom is awesome. Ulagaya to her. So I'm going to tell her that.
Yeah, thank you. I will.
A slight twist on a similar question.
Mhm.
Can you kind of talk about a woman that you've featured in Lady Pasifika that stands out for being resilient, and why? Why?
Well, I guess maybe it's a bias thing because of where I work, but in our third issue, the hardest slash strive issue, there was a female Kepola. She is an artist at the YMCA. She's the artist in residence at the YMCA. Oh geez, no, the YWCA. Sorry, the YWCA. Kepola Dudua. She is an artist, the residence and artist there, but she was a former, I guess she is a former convict, had gone through a really tough time with substance abuse issues, had lost everything, lost her family, lost her children due to substance abuse issues. But she came out at the other end of that, and she did the work. She was involved with the YWCA's programs for women coming out of the prison system. She had to do the hard work of getting herself a job, learning how to interview, and just trying to readjust to society again, coming out of the prison system. That is really a special, I think, topic for me because of where I work, really, but understanding that a lot of our Pasifika people coming out of the prison system, or just people that coming out in general, are a lot of times forgotten, and a lot of times feel like they have no future ahead of them because of where they've come from or because of their past. And Kepola's story really was, to me, a true story of resilience. No matter how many times she fell down when she came out of the prison system, she continued moving forward. What she does now as far as the artwork, she learned in prison, so it's an amazing thing to see that this craft that she learned in prison is now something that is helping her tell her story and through artwork at the YWCA as well. So I think she is one that comes to mind when I think of resilience, because she came from substance abuse, and she went to prison for some time, lost her children, lost her family, and came out and is doing amazing things today, even today at the YWCA.
Thanks for sharing that. There's a question that I'm going to jump to because I think it's somewhat complementary. The comment is, I noticed that sometimes young Pacific Islanders who are fresh out of school, who don't have title or high positions, can have a hard time when starting to work in our communities. We have to work alongside elders, people that came before us, and lots of personalities. And sometimes culturally it's hard to deal with that. Do you experience that in your work? Was being a young, educated Pacific Islander woman an issue in your efforts to lead, innovate, and speak out on behalf of and alongside the larger Pacific communities?
Oh, yes. I think now, even now to this day, there's times where, and that could be cultural too, where you have to know your place. And I think it's definitely now with the generation is so different. For me too, I'm a whole nother generation from what the youth that are coming up now. But I resonate with the frustration of not being given the opportunities or even just the space to share concerns or ideas that could improve something culturally too. I definitely have experienced that. But at the same time, I was really lucky at times to be welcomed into spaces where I was able to share my experiences on things, or maybe just even my views. But for our younger generations now, this is why I feel Lady Pasifika also had to come to fruition. It was a space for our youth to feel like they could have a voice, that what they're feeling, what they're experiencing is valid. It could be completely different from my experience 30 years ago, what they're going through now. But Lady Pasifika is not meant to be something that will not grow. It's meant to grow, and I want our youth to feel like they can be part of that, even if it's just one step, just sharing a blog or just coming on and commenting on something. But I have experienced it in my church. You know, it's a little bit more cultural, you know, a lot more traditional. And that frustration has resonated in my generation of youth members as well, unfortunately, which is, I think, another inspiration for starting Lady Pasifika. It was an outlet for me to kind of share what's going on, maybe not with me personally all the time, but what else is going on out there in my community. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah, and actually the next question is kind of pushing on that a little further, specific to your experience of growing the business of Lady Pasifika. So the question is, can you share with us how cultural traditions or restrictions presented some challenges for you growing your business or Lady Pasifika, and how you broke through some of those barriers?
Oh, that's a good one. I think growing the business. I mean, I think the lack of, I've been very fortunate in the last 2 years alone, that people, you know, especially, you know, in the academic space, have given me opportunities to talk about Lady Pasifika, have allowed me to, even with, you know, DVD, with the radio, you know, invited us to come on and talk about Lady Pasifika. But I think it's because of the time that we're in. Like, you know, Indigenous voices are becoming so much more highlighted, you know, and listened to and given the opportunity, given what's happening in our across the globe. So I think when we launched Lady Pasifika, it was like the right time to start voicing our concerns. Culturally, I think there's still a struggle because I think a lot of us don't feel, maybe not a lot, maybe just there's just, especially like a different generation, don't feel like some of these stories need to be out there. I think they feel like, oh, well, you know, we've all been through that. And I think some people may not feel like it's important enough to get out there. But the overwhelming response of positivity that we've gotten has definitely overshadowed that. But I think culturally, coming from a female perspective, you know, that it's a female's, at least majority wise, it's a female's perspective, female's magazine. I feel like maybe sometimes it could be, you know, not taken seriously, especially if we're talking about issues like mental health, you know, sexual health, you know, even running a business as a female, Pasifika female, you know, can be tough for some people to want to be interested in, you know, or to digest that, oh, we're talking about this and we're talking about it out loud, you know. So there have been some challenges. Personally, I've been really lucky personally. I've been very, very fortunate to have people very supportive. You know, so it's hard for me to say that I've been through any real issues yet as far as having issues. I mean, the biggest issue with the business, growing the business, is learning how to do it, right? Learning how to do it properly. But as far as the influence and the exposure that Lady Pasifika has had, I am very fortunate that people are so interested in help and has helped me along the way. And I hope Lady Pasifika will do that for other people that are here that want to learn, want to grow, will do the same.
So I want to follow up on what you just said, right? The biggest challenge you've had is actually just learning how to do it. And
yeah,
something you said in your presentation, right, was the benefits of being prepared, and then also the learning process that you've had.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to kind of reflect on that, right? Like, how do you look at sort of balancing, you know, preparation with just really jumping in and doing the work, right?
Man, if I had the answer to that, oh my gosh. But it's so true. I think as a creative, and that's such a buzzword right now that, but as someone, I've always been on the creative end of things. And for a long time, I tried to fit myself into other things because I thought being a creative is not going to get me anywhere. Being a creative is not going to make me successful, especially as a Pasifika woman. And a creative, you know, as far as like, I love to write, I love to read, I love to, you know, so, you know, when I'm trying to balance, like as a creative, I just want to do it. I just want to get it out there. And then and then you feel the backlash of, oh crap, I didn't prepare enough. And so like, for me, it's almost like always having homework to do, coming home from work, researching on, and at this, as part of the lesson was not getting distracted by things that are happening outside of your space. I mean, you could be inspired, but I feel like sometimes we get bogged down by maybe the knowledge that others have. Like maybe they did go to school for that, or maybe they did have some sort of background in it, versus me, who is fresh, don't know what I'm doing. But I think, when you actually do learn, or when you feel like, wow, it's actually working, what I've read and me practicing it on top of my own personal interest or what I bring to the table, it actually starts to work. It's so much more, it's so rewarding, but balancing it is, oh man, there is no equation, no, no neat answer that I can provide, because it's really like a learn as you go type of thing. But I feel like there's a lot of creators or entrepreneurs, whatever you want. I think a lot of them say the same thing, that even if you did have the formula, anything could change, could shift, and you're always learning as you go. But as of right now, with COVID, honestly, 2020 was a crazy year, and still is a crazy year. But because of everything shutting down and the way that we've interviewed people has changed, it has really given me the time that I needed 2 years ago to sit with myself, do the proper research, and monitor what people like, what people are responding to. So, that's probably not a great answer, but.
No, absolutely. There's 2 questions in the Q&A that I'm going to put together because I think they're good follow-ons to that.
Okay.
So the first is, knowing what you do now with Lady Pasifika, can you name one thing you would do differently? And the second is, what was the turning point for you where you felt you had failed? And what was the aha moment that brought you back stronger, resilient, and more confident about your journey for Lady Pasifika?
Okay, so the first thing I would do is listen to myself. First thing I would do is trust my gut. That was a big part of the lesson, was not doing what I had done. And I'm not going to say what it is, but trusting that what I knew was correct and trusting my gut in that. That'd be the first thing I do, is not make, so that I don't make that mistake again. And the turning point for me was during the beginning of this year, when the pandemic really started to hit and the shutdown happened. I think the aha moment for me was going online and reading the stories of the women and people that were still showing up. And it doesn't mean only physically going to work but still showing up for their families, still, finding ways to support their families, those who were laid off, those who still wanted to stay connected with their community. Like those stories to me was like, why am I allowing myself to feel this way when there's people out there that are still showing up? And we had so much support behind the scenes from people that have been following us, I think, from the beginning, just checking in, like, hey, what's going on with Lady Pasifika? We just want to check in. When is your next issue coming out, right? Because at the end of 2019 and going into 2020, I was still kind of like not knowing where I was going to go with this. And then seeing the resilience of my own community, which is what inspired Lady Pasifika to begin with, was really the aha moment. Like, why are you moping when there's people out there, some who are discouraged, some who need those messages, and some who are doing it? And so that aha moment came where, you know what, Lady Pasifika still has to show up. We still have to show up for our community that, who may turn to our pages for positive reinforcement, positive stories of the people that are still showing up in their communities, which inspired, thank you, the 5th issue.
And a comment that came into the chat just shows that is what's doing, right? I love Lady Pasifika, and I'm so grateful for you, Tolua. You're lifting us up and moving us forward.
Thank you. I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
A question particular to COVID. It's mahalo for the ways you and your Lady Pasifika team have collaborated with members and leaders from the Micronesian community in Hawaii. people who are facing rising discrimination and high rates of COVID-19 infection and morbidity.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the reasons you have chosen to support and empower Micronesians in Hawaii?
Oh, that is something I think started even before COVID. So at the beginning of Lady Pasifika, when I was trying to think of how was I going to term the magazine to empower all the Pacific, because Polynesia is such a huge buzzword. Polynesian this, Polynesian that, but I said, that's too small. I want to share stories from the entire Pacific, because why only close off this? Why only choose this when there's this huge, the Moana, across the Moana, we can share stories. And at the time, social media, there was a huge, at the time when I was brainstorming it, there was a huge shift that I started to recognize on social media back, very, 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 very racial targeted posts against Micronesians at that time. And so for me, it goes back to, I think, where my mom has served in the community. And she said, we talk about it on our own about, the influx of the Micronesian community coming into Hawaii. And she talked about the services that they offer KKV and Micronesians coming in, and just the connecting that way back when in the 80s, when Samoans first came over, this is how they were treated. But there was no social media back then, right? We were looked at as, we're sucking out the resources from the community, we are not educated, and so, with that perspective, when I recognized what was happening in social media, it really made me upset, because I felt like, for me personally, at least from posts that I had seen, so many of these racial posts or negative posts were from Pacific Islanders, Polynesians. And I'm just like, what are we doing? Like, for a lot of, as Polynesians, as Pacific Islanders, we're still facing our own issues with racism, or just even like lack of opportunity for Pacific Islanders in general. Yet here we are turning our backs on our own, who may be different from us, who come from a different background, have a different cultural background, and we're turning our backs on them, making them the brunt of jokes because, well, I don't know, And so that in the beginning, when I was brainstorming Lady Pasifika, was something I was like, no, we're gonna address, we want to showcase all our women. We want to empower all of our youth, and that includes the Micronesian community at the time when they're, especially even now, there's still that racial stereotype, and it's for Polynesians too. But man, the Micronesian community is like, I felt like it was my duty and responsibility as a Polynesian woman, as a Pacific Islander, to stand up for my fellow Pacific Islanders, and so and we've gotten so much support from the Micronesian community. And, it really is something that was really a no-brainer for me personally, was we were gonna empower and speak up, and no matter how difficult it is or how some people may not like it, we were gonna talk about that. And we were going to empower our Micronesian community to share what's going on with them as well, if they wanted to.
That's great. And we're reaching the end of our time, but I just want to ask one more question, if that's okay. Yeah. I really like the way that you're sort of telling these stories, and they're not always perfect stories, and that's actually very powerful, right? And part of the process of, I think you said, getting over the facade of being perfect, right? Yeah. Is a good way to put it. Anyways, I'm wondering, if you can, thinking about highlighting these stories in the communities, if you can just share, one anecdote about how you've seen it's had impact, right? That would be wonderful.
I've been really blessed through Lady Pasifika to have, especially with the age of social media, to have connected with women that I feel like I would have never met had I not launched Lady Pasifika. And the impact that I see so far is that, at least from what I can see on our pages, is that there is a conversation now that I'm so grateful to be part of of our women that are really taking responsibility, or not taking, but just taking on their own roles as leaders in their community. Women, I know some women that have, through their inspiration from Lady Pasifika, have decided to go after some roles that are not traditionally supported in their cultures. Through Lady Pasifika, I've had some women carry on conversations with their elders about things that are usually taboo, but felt like, through Lady Pasifika, I felt like you had introduced it in a way that I could introduce to my elders, possibly, or even to my children, to my youth. And I'm just seeing a lot of our women, really not really being unapologetic about what they want, and in a sense where it's serving, and where they feel like their wants, their dreams, their voices are valued, and really supporting each other. That was one of the big major things I wanted for Lady Pasifika, was supporting a real supportive community of Pacific Islander women, cheering each other on for whatever goals you have. You have a sisterhood,
Mahalo, Tolua. Thank you for being with us today. The fact that you're doing this, as a criminal justice professional by day, and then clearly a shiro all the time, it's really amazing. This was a very inspirational conversation. So I really want to thank you, and thank you for making the time to share your thoughts with us. As well as I want to thank everybody, all of our guests, for joining today. Thanks for tuning into the ISR and CPAS Resilient Pacific Seminar.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. And James and Aida, always for doing a wonderful job with the webinar and Zoom. So mahalo, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you.